Oh, lights on. Alright, response video to part of a Fred video that I didn't care too much for. Didn't even get it really. Learning of myth. I don't know what that means. Learning of. Well, anyway. So he says, I'll play it. And then I'll tell you what he said.
They're not part of the family unit. They are who they are, and their key interests are people like them of their age and their music and their separation from you. And you know, and that's very different. And you can be proud of them, of course. But it is different. You suddenly become confronted with an adult. Or maybe not suddenly, but that's what happens. So it's just a different automobile. Yeah. I mean, I'm not prepared to do the thing where you say I shouldn't have had children. I'm not prepared to do that. And I'm not going to be telling my children not to have children. But I don't think they will, actually.
Yeah, well look, I mean obviously you wouldn't be able to tell them anymore anyway, right? Because they do become adults. And the fact that people don't even recognize that fact before they have kids is, in my opinion, stunningly scary. Okay? I mean, so to not even recommend that people should, at minimum, have some sort of little checklist here. You know, don't be deluded as I was when I had kids, and I mean, obviously, these are some things I miscalculated, and I was completely, I mean, this was basically an irresponsible act, because, yeah, I was completely unaware of these truths, that these things are not toys, that they will be human beings, and that you will not have control over who they become and what they become, that society is going to raise them just as much as you're going to raise them. And so they are likely to come out to be exactly what you don't like in the world. Or at least there's a possibility of that happening. And that will be frustrating and perhaps irritating. And then it might personally impact your productivity in the world, as they might be undoing in the future the very things you attempted to do in the present. Or some other statement. But it's not about telling them what to do. It's about giving people the benefit of your experience. I mean, you can't even at minimum do that much. But I guess, again, this statement that you're not going to go there. I just don't understand. So you still defend the decision. You still defend somebody's fucking right to do their little Frankenstein fucking experiments and presume that the fucking the gift giver, the gift receiver, doesn't have a right to complain, doesn't have a right to do anything to fight for their rights. You're not sympathetic to those individuals who have been sentenced to a life that they think was a waste, not just a waste of their time, okay, but a stealing of their welfare, that they were used as fodder to run an engine of American Idol and you know, all-star games and all this other tripe and crap and puke that this fucking civilization builds pyramids to. And you think it's okay. There's no ethical question to be resolved here. You have no obligation to say, well, you know, in hindsight, being a little more enlightened than I was at 18, yes, I can certainly say I wouldn't be making that decision. I wouldn't be imposing life, and I wouldn't say that I think I can find a whole lot of other people on this planet who I think are competent to do the job either. Because essentially it's playing motherfucking God. You can't say something like that? I mean, fuck. Sorry, but that's bullshit. Moving on.
Yeah, the world's going to have to change more gradually than that, I'm afraid, for me.
For you, again, so it's not, you really can't separate philosophy from your personal emotional life. So you can't, you know, because it's your cat or your dog, you can't be objective about dogs anymore. So anytime you say anything about doggery, I should assume you can't do it rationally because you're too caught up in your own doggery experience. I mean, this is just bullshit. Sorry, this is bullshit.
What else was I going to talk about? I was going to talk about something specific, though, in this. And this is
I mean, it's a great irony that you're basically saying that we can't suppress any of our biases about things that we have personally experienced in life, and therefore convey the benefits of our experience to others, because the only thing we can gain from our experience is a bias, or something so manipulative and distorting of our perception that we are no longer qualified to have an intellectual or intelligent conversation, that our words can no longer be of any meaning, because we have a personal experience. And I would argue that it should be exactly the other way around. It should be that we are philosophically enlightened by our personal experience, and that we can see through our own biases and prejudices and attachments that we are full of shit.
But I don't know. It was this thing I was talking about at the beginning, wasn't it? About St. Augustine and time not being understandable when you look at it, but you just live within it when you don't look at it, or free will being completely ridiculous when you look at it, but when you don't look at it, you just move through it as if you're in it. And the same with life, life.
Well, I don't even get this whole time thing. Yeah, I mean, obviously I can't dissect this moment because this moment's gone before I even knew it was here, because it's moving faster than I can. But I'm perfectly comfortable with time. Time passes and I get it. I mean, it doesn't distress me or unbalance me at all. I get the concept that I'm moving through time. I mean, that's not hard to figure out. So I don't even get that bit of historical, so this idea that I'm supposed to have some sort of cognitive dissonance when I contemplate time. It doesn't get in my way in any real way.
It's ridiculous when you look at it. When you don't look at it, it's like a ride. It's just a ride. I tell you what this meaning thing is.
Yeah, like I'm going to really love that fucking phrase. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, well, shouldn't people always be looking at it? I mean, realistically, we have all this power. We can play God. We can initiate a whole generation of human beings. And shouldn't we be doing something besides writing?
Just one last thing. This meaning thing, because Professor Anton mentioned this meaning thing, and I think Gary and maybe Modern Mystic responded in some way to that. I can't remember the details, unfortunately. But it was about this meaning thing. And I think that is one of the problems. And I hate to say this, but I think it's a kind of postmodern thing, or a post-structuralist thing, or something like that. At least it has parallels to me with, the way the post-structuralism and deconstruction works in language. Or, because in language, historically, and to a certain extent, I think still, in terms of the kind of folk psychology of our understanding, language is pinned to something. The logos in the beginning was the word. There's like one word, and that's God, and everything else takes its meaning from this one thing which is located outside of language. And this probably doesn't make any sense, but
yeah, well, what he's basically arguing here, and he'll say it in more words, and I'm going to say it in more words, so I'll pause here, is that it's all just made out of words, is this end product here. That there is no reality. Well, if you just focus, if you take the language and ignore the God thing, and just say, well, instead of using God as the premise, we'll use water is wet as the premise. Yeah, they're two words, okay, invented words. But we know what wet is. We've all experienced wet. And so now we have defined water because we've associated with something called wet. And we don't need to do anything with wet. We don't need to tie it to do any further dissection or reduction into that word. It can be left alone. And so that is the constituents of logic, is the fact that you make these little statements. Water is wet. That becomes an A, and the Z and the X and all the other things are all these other little phrases that you can set up. And then you can do a thing called logic. And what you're basically doing is modeling the real world. You are looking at the real world, defining and describing it, turning it into these phrases. So the words aren't just gibberish, they aren't just empty words, they're representations of reality. So I think it's just bogus to say when you unravel the onion that somehow there's nothing in the middle. Okay, language doesn't work that way. There is something in the middle. There are these little statements of fucking truth, okay, that you can put together logically and draw new conclusions and write new statements of truth.
That's a kind of traditional view of language. which I think is still haunts our thinking. Actually, you know, there is the word, and things are named, and that naming is absolute. But when you get postmodernism and post-structuralism and deconstruction, particularly, and I think of the people like Derrida and Lyotard and those post-structuralist guys, their take of that is different. I mean, Roland Barthes as well. You know, he says that in language, meaning is deferred. You know, you can't look inside of language for what the words mean. I beg your pardon, you can't look outside of language, because there isn't anything outside the language, you know. I mean, there's things, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there's no things in the world, but there's no absolute conferrer of meaning, there's no God, there's no logos, which stands outside of, behind the word.
Yeah, behind the words. But there is, okay? There is a reality of relationship between thing and thing and thing and thing and thing, all right? And so as we start to give these things labels, then we define what the relation is between these labels. We define a relation between water and wetness.
Is to confer meaning on them. If you want to know the meaning of a word, you look it up in the dictionary, what do you find? A whole bunch of other words. So you look at each one of those words, and you look elsewhere in the dictionary, there's a whole bunch of words. All the words are just tissues together, it's just a pattern. Yeah.
But they're different words. Some of them have hard meaning, some of them have soft meaning. Some of them can be used as indicators of a state of that word, or the condition of that word at this particular moment in time, or over time. So they can be qualifiers. Some words are qualifiers, some words are explicit. Okay, ouch is explicit.
You know, a shifting pattern, because it's always in motion, isn't it? And meaning, the meaning in the language isn't, as I say, behind the language in some way. It's just constantly deferred to other parts of the language. So it's just, you have to keep going off to other pages in the dictionary to find out what the words mean, because it's deferred. And it's drawn through difference, you know, every word means something different to every other word.
Yeah, well, that different stuff is a phenomenon of our recklessness and sloppiness. But let's not argue that language has to be that sloppy, because it doesn't have to be.
The differences to every other meaning that it takes its ultimate meanings. So it's that kind of thing. And I think there's a parallel in that. Sorry, that was a really stupid, botched explanation of deconstruction. But anyway, this idea that in language there's nothing outside of the text, there is only language. You know, meaning is just constantly arising from this tissue of other meanings. There's nothing absolute you can put your finger on and say that's where meaning is. That's what it's a bit like this life thing. Oh, got to it eventually. You know, the meaning of life isn't at the end of it, is it? You know, God is dead, Nietzsche said that, everybody else said it since. There's no God in the first place. So you can't put your finger on God and say he's the meaning and everything else takes its meaning from that. Or the various other non-Christian religions, which do very similar things, actually. You know, the meaning is in the, or the meaning is in the afterlife.
Yeah, but I don't remember exactly where he goes here, so. Yeah, I mean, that's quite obvious, okay? So, yeah, we've taken all the ghosts and the goblins and all the other happily ever after fairy tale crap. Yeah, all of that crap is completely irrelevant to any realistic discussion of what is we're accomplishing by being here and what our obligation is to the rest of the sentient beings that are also involved in our interaction, both present and future. We can't do anything about the past. That one we can write off too. Just like God, we're not going to go back to the past and fix anything. So let's play ball in the present and the future.
Text, probably from God, stop talking. But, you know, you can't say the meaning is in the afterlife because we don't have that anymore. You know, so it's not like you get to the end of this sentence of life and then the meaning reveals itself in the product, because that's not there. There's no afterlife. You just stop. And it's not. It doesn't precede you. You know, the meaning isn't. You're not put in here for a reason. That doesn't make any sense, really, apart from the really simple, keep the machine running kind of reasons. So the only place for meaning is in the language itself, or the only meaning of life is in life itself. But that just feels a bit, is that it?
Yeah, it does. I just don't see why this is complicated, okay? We know how meaning is derived. It's derived through something that has a passion, okay, either positive or negative. Repulsion, attraction, those are that's meaning in the world. What is a repulsive idea? What's an attractive idea? What's a good idea? What's a bad idea? So let's just take all the adjectives for attractive and repulsive, all right, and apply them to these concepts or these ideas or these behaviors, and we can derive from that an understanding of what is meaningful. Efficiency would be a meaningful word. It would be an idea, a concept, a thing to strive for, to attempt to accomplish. Yeah, do less harm, okay, than do no harm if possible. But certainly in the end game, create more, eliminate more suffering than you cause. Those simple ideals are where you derive meaning. I mean, that's the accomplishment here. Accomplishment is kind of a meaning word. It's kind of an adjective word.
It's all a bit deferred, isn't it, really? So the meaning of my walking down the path is because I'm walking a dog, and the meaning of my walking my dog is because she's a dog and she has to exercise, and the meaning of she's a dog and has to exercise is because we got it from the pound, and the meaning we got it from the pound is because, it's endlessly deferred. It goes on and on and on. What's the ultimate meaning?
Is it really endlessly deferred? I mean, did you really try to dissect it further and just say, why is any of this taking place? Oh, that's right, because my parents made a decision to inject me into this world where I have needs. So I had a need to have a dog, and I had a need to have relationships with people, and I had a need to do this, and I had a need to do that. I had a desire, a compulsion. So yeah, it can be dissected to the source, and the source is the very idea that this need thing needs to exist, which is a big flaw in the logic.
Help one another, we could say. The big meanings. We should love one another or die. We should do that. Big meanings. Why?
I don't even know what that even means. Okay, so again, why break philosophy with a word like, you want to talk about a useless piece of shit, garbage, junk word? Well, there you go. There's a word that should never even be in a language, like random and spontaneous and a few other. Get them the fuck out of vocabulary, because what fucking use is that crap?
I'm not being facetious, but why? It's like looking up another word in the dictionary in the big life book.
Yeah, right. So it doesn't make any difference whether you jump in front of that train or you don't jump in front of the train. I mean, that's just stupid. Why? Is because there's a logical equation that can be written out of words that describe what's good and what's bad. And then we know that this good-bad thing is the game. It's the game. It's the game. It's the fuel the whole fucking thing runs on. It's the meaning fuel.
We're on a road to nowhere. You know what I mean? Look at another word in the life book.
Well, look, the words you ought to deal with are futility and responsibility. Those are really big words. Those are words with really fancy concepts and ideas attached to them. And those are the words we should be motivated by. So anyway, but yeah, I'm sorry. I just found it obnoxious that you're going to just abdicate and say, okay, because I've lived a life, I have too many biases, too many personal relationships, so I can't be a philosopher anymore because obviously I'm going to say something that might, offend my love for this, or my caring for that, or my sensitivity to this, or my blah, 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 and you go right down the list. I mean, that's what it sounds like you're saying. Or you're saying, I don't really believe in this concept of antinatalism. I don't believe that people should be restricted in what they have a right to impose on somebody else. They should be able to drive into your living room, smash you against the wall, and then give you a cyanide pill to take you out of your misery. I mean, that concept just makes sense to me. Yeah, yes, we should have that liberty, and we should impose on each other. And if everybody doesn't want to go on the roller coaster, well, we should still go on the roller coaster, and we should tie them into the fucking seat. All right? Because it's about our right to have fun. It's not about their right to say, fuck you! Shove this crap up your ass! Okay, anyway, enough said. Irritating.